Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be and wherever you're joining us from today. My name is Brandon Savage, and I'd like to welcome all of you to our monthly webinar. The title of this webinar today is Lifting the Curve, Building a Business Case for AI-Driven Customer Lifetime Value Growth. To give a real brief introduction of who you'll hear from today, again, my name is Brandon Savage. I'm the head of solution enablement here at Vosik AI. Towards the end of our presentation, you'll hear from Vasu Akala as our chief data scientist. And our featured presenter today, we love when we're able to have one of our clients join us for these webinars, is Sava Svetkov, who is the VP of Finance and Strategy from Brinks Home. And I'll let him give a little bit more introduction when he starts here in just a moment. A quick overview of Vosik AI and our solution. The use cases for our solution include customer retention, price increases, strategic price increases, second chance lead scoring, customer winbacks, and also, pulled the trigger a little bit early there, and then referrals and NPS scores. And the type of questions you see on the screen are things that our solution can help you answer in order to make better business decisions. Today, we are joined by one of our clients, Brinks Home. It's good timing. Last month, Vasu and I and several of other team members were able to visit with Sava and his team on site as they were doing their Q1 launch and kind of product review, strategic review. Last week, a week ago today, this morning in Florida, I was at a conference, the Barnes and Buchanan conference for the electronic security industry, and the CEO of Brinks Home had a presentation he gave about the state of their company. And it was very, very well received by peers within the industry as to what Brinks has accomplished over the last few years. They're the top 3 home security provider in the United States, serving around 800,000 customers, over 1,000 customer-facing employees, over 3 million inbound phone calls per year. And we're happy to have Sava with us. We've had multiple executives from Brinks who have been part of these webinars in the past, including Jay Autry and just a few months ago, Veronica Maturi. We're excited to have Sava with us today, and I'm going to stop talking so we can hear from him. And we appreciate his presence. If you have questions along the way, feel free to post them in the Q&A bar. We'll probably kind of try to answer those towards the end of the presentation today, but we appreciate you being here and your engagement. And if you have questions, just let us know. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Sava.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, it looks good.
Great, good to be here. Sava Svetkov, I'm Vice President of Finance and Strategy at Brinks Home. Just a little bit of background of what I do. There's a few different roles that roll up to me. The responsibilities of the traditional financial planning and analysis, budgeting, forecasting, and so on. I'm also over the pricing team, which is looking to optimize pricing with relationship to customer lifetime value. And lastly, it's strategic finance, where I'm kind of helping the company make better capital allocation decisions, and in essence, what is the best way that we can deploy our funds and create more enterprise value. I've been with the company for about 6 years now, and I've had the pleasure to work with Vosik for 5 of those years, since 2019. And today I'll be sharing some of the learnings and how to think about creating a business case into this context. So first, we'll start off with customer lifetime value, and why do we think in terms of customer lifetime value? So it's important to have one measurement when we're making determinations of increasing value, and if the more boiled down that is at the unit level, the better the decision making is. And customer lifetime value, in short, is what is the present value of all of the expected cash flows of a customer over their expected lifetime. And the way that's calculated at a high level is what is the margin, that is the revenue that the customer is paying minus what it costs the company to serve the customer over their expected lifetime value, and then that's brought down to present value terms. The reason why customer lifetime value is important is because it allows us to make decisions at the customer level, and the closer that we're able to tie those decisions down to the place that we're making those decisions, really it makes them much more accurate and much more powerful. So if you kind of look at the chart on the right, like it's the area under the curve that is the value of it's a large component, that's the lifetime, and it's under that area of the curve that the value of the customer is realized. So you may be asking, well, okay, if that's how you calculate customer lifetime value, what are different ways to improve it, and how can we generate more value? It's several different ways, and they're all have their own trade-offs. I think that a lot of levers that you can pull to improve customer lifetime value have ripples that, for example, like if we're to increase revenue, you could increase it by doing a price increase. Well, like that would increase revenue, yes, but on the flip side, it may reduce customer lifetime value if you were at a place that you're not as competitive with the market there. So there's a trade-off to that. You could be increasing the margin by lowering costs. And costs are also tricky because if you are, one way to reduce costs is by kind of, figuring out, hey, is there areas of service that we could be, doing more efficiently, and or maybe like not providing a certain service that, costs a lot or so. But the flip side of that is if it's not balanced well, you could cause worse customer experience and then lower lifetime and attrition, which would, it will be plus and minus of that. And the other way is really increasing customer lifetime value, and that's a combination of having a good customer experience, competitive pricing, and doing really well on retention. And really the goal is kind of in this equation is to trade up. So if you're making an investment to improve customer lifetime value, that you're able to then, in essence, have the improvement be bigger than what the investment is. So that way, the whole thing is looked at once and making sure that, we're growing in the positive with the decisions that we're making. So here we'll focus more on the increase lifetime value part of the equation. And, aside from, pricing and customer experience, there's, retention is a really big component of increasing customer lifetime value. And, historically, the kind of most common way of retaining a customer is a reactive retention when a customer is calling to cancel. And that customer is calling already upset, and you have to figure out like, hey, what can we give that customer for them to stay? Now, these are customers that are already unhappy, and it takes a lot to save that customer at the point in time they're calling like already pissed off. And the other thing that's interesting just from a finance standpoint is that when you're looking at reactive retention, it's a lot easier to calculate value because you have one state of the world where the customer is no longer a customer and there's nothing, and you have the other state of the world where the customer continues being on with the company, and you're kind of evaluating the investment versus that. Now we have proactive retention, which is really exciting, which is how can we, like, in essence, front run the process, and customers that are heading towards the unhappy path, how can we reach them like before they're calling? So we have to retain them reactively, right? So now this is made possible by having a really good visibility of which of your customers are on that unhappy path, and then magnitude of like, hey, which are the unhappier ones So with proactive retention, then you're able to kind of bend the curve and impact the customer experience further upstream before like you get to a situation where you have to do reactive retention, and that tends to be like a lot less costly and more profitable. So what Vasek has done and made possible here is that it's really interesting. It's like the AI predictive model for churn takes the data of the subscriber base and in essence like analyzes like what are the key factors to that are predicting attrition, and then the model continues learning from the experience, and it continues adapting, and then that in essence gives each subscriber a predictive score of like how likely they are to cancel. And then with that, like you're able to have an expectation of like, oh, okay, certain subset of the subscriber base is like a lot riskier than others, and so that helps really identify one, like really the state of the subscriber base. Every company is going to have a different subscriber base of customers, and they'll all have different attributes and maybe different reasons for cancellation and so on. But that provides at least like the spread of what it is, and then kind of focusing on the ones that are the most unhappy. They would be the customers that are closest to calling and canceling, so you have to do a reactive action. So the thing that's kind of interesting about that is that you could focus the efforts more on the customers that are unhappier there to because you gain a lot more from bending a really unhappy curve to a happy curve than someone that's like moderately like unhappy to happy, right? So that gives you some flexibility there. So then question is, well, okay, if we are thinking about in essence converting customers from unhappy curve to a happy curve, then how do you value the improvement in customer lifetime value in this case? Because it's not as straightforward as like a customer that would have canceled, and in this case it's you have two states of the world where in one of them, like really the bottom curve on the left here would be a customer that that's on the unhappy path. So the value that would be realized for that customer if nothing is done is in essence like the area underneath that curve. You have the happy path if customer accepts an offer and signs an extension, and they would be a much lower attrition customer. So it's the difference between those two curves that is the incremental value that can be provided from a proactive extension here. Over time, that's something that you continue measuring what's the improvements from one and the other, yeah, I mean that's in essence like how you calculate the incremental improvement in value. And then what gets measured against that is like of course you have to make some sort of an investment to put the customer on a happy path. So you have a initial outlay of could it be an equipment, or it depends on the type of business, where security monitoring industry, there's customers have different kinds of equipment, cameras, and they have the monthly rate. So there's the option of doing either or a combination of kind of offers that provide that. Some companies may not have the equipment. It's more a subscription-based model that's like streaming. Well, like the options there are a little bit more limited to rate reductions. However, I mean there's like vast kind of universe in what can be done with rate reductions and proactive extensions there as well. So going to next slide here is the way that value would be measured once this is rolled out. It would be at the subscriber level where they would be data of like, hey, these customers' prediction was at a given, they were really on a happy path and they predicted churn was 50% in the next 12 months or so, right? And the way that would be measured is that as those customers are taking extensions, can validate that the performance before and after like differs substantially, so you can then get confidence in the prediction there. And you know, by summing up the piece parts of how those actions are like adding up, you know, that ultimately would deliver like what the total value is. Now, the tricky part with this is that you would measure the value bottoms up, but like you wouldn't necessarily know as a business what that looks like until you're able to, you know, risk score your base and see what the spread is of the base, because there's a kind of a, you know, few elements that would determine it, right? Like if you have a base that is higher than normal attrition, you would have like a much bigger opportunity to do this. And then it also depends on, you know, size of company, because you would have a bigger opportunity, and also on the types of offers that, you know, your customers will be interested in to extend their customer lifetime cycle there. So, you know, ultimately, like you have this validation mechanism through which you're able to you know, in essence, like sum of the parts of all the actions that are done, and then be able to evaluate how much incremental value is created through these proactive extensions. Then, you know, going into like at a high level. So one is like on the prior bottoms up approach, it's a little bit difficult to know like what that means for a business. So starting at a high level would be where you get like a really high-level estimate of what that could potentially mean for your business. And the factors that are going to influence this are like, you know, how is the current attrition rate relative to the industry? Well, if it's a lot higher, there's a lot more opportunity to action on it. The larger the subscriber base that a business has, like that means like, hey, there's, you know, more opportunity there, because, you know, you just have like a lot more subscribers that could potentially be unhappy. And then the other proportion is like, you know, really what's the spread within the base? You know, even like subscriber bases that are really happy have some proportion of customers that are on the unhappy path, that are generating, you know, most of the cancels, kind of like the classic 80-20 rule. So really improving the performance of, you know, let's say a company is, you know, great attrition and everything, but the 10% of customers are really unhappy and they have this like high rate of attrition, you know, that if we're able to like improve their experience, then that disproportionately helps the overall attrition rates, because a lot of cancels are coming from that group, right? So so there's a kind of an opportunity there for, you know, different types of companies. So, you know, the way to look at it on top down level and see, you know, what could be out there is, attrition is one of the, you know, key measures for a subscription business when it comes to like enterprise valuation. And, you know, I think looking at something like 100-200 basis points of an improvement is something that could be like a rough guideline of like, hey, what's potentially out there for this business case. And then going through the bottoms up, you know, kind of mechanics of, you know, what I talked about of like mapping out the base and so on, you can get a much better feel of like how that how that looks on the bottoms up approach there. Okay, so moving into you know, what our experience was with the Vosik AI. So I joined the company about 2018, and in 2019 we piloted for the first time doing proactive extensions. And then from the learnings of that pilot, you know, over time that was rolled out, you know, scaled up in 2020, 2021. And, you know, currently we're at a run rate of about, you know, over 50,000 extensions a year proactively. And what that means is something else to think about is like when a proactive extension is done, it's not equivalent to a save because, you know, you're, you know, bending the curve of, you know, the unhappy customers to happy customers. And it takes like, you know, 3 to 5, depending on like how risky your customers are and how much the improvement in the curve could be there to generate a save. So the way it's looked at, like from a budgeting standpoint, it will be that like, you know, hey, we're doing a certain amount of extensions in a given time frame. And afterwards, that results in about every 3 or 4 or 5 of those result in a save in the next 12 months or so, right? So, in this case, that's, approximately, over 12,000 saves a year. So that's a pretty sizable enterprise value. And the way that we're kind of measuring that is, getting, over 50,000 actions. And if you're having, and this is again going to depend per company, per what the discount rate of the company is, the spread of the subscribers, the types of offers that are given, and so on. So that would, say if you're using like $200 of like NPV, like value generated per one of these actions, if you're doing, 50,000 plus of them, you're generating more than 10 million values a year. $10 million of value, like in year value. And then if you do this like every year, like going forward, you have a perpetuity of like, $10 million a year, which is like pretty massive in enterprise value terms. So if you're using like a simple, discount rate of 10%, that's an enterprise value of $100 million. So it's a really, really, could be a really massive opportunity there. And my favorite thing about it is that it provides so much flexibility from a finance leader standpoint. There's a few challenges that we're dealing with that are normally like, hey, when we're making an investment, are we investing too much too soon? And, are we going to end up, investing some high amount of dollars and not see a return on those dollars afterwards? So how do we stair step into something like this, and that you're able to prove it out as you go on? So, there's several different, really important ways that this could be tailored based on a company to provide what the company is looking at there. So, like the flexibility of the target customers is one where, like, if the company decides to focus on company can decide to focus on customers that are like really, really unhappy, like, maybe like the top like 5-10 percentile or so. And that, like, the higher, the more the unhappier the customers that the investments are made against, the higher the return on those investments is going to be. So if there's a certain return target that a company has as a target, like, you're easily able to fit those returns based on like where you draw the line. It's like, hey, we're going after like the top 25%, but not anybody under, or maybe like depends on the spread of the base. Like, you could go like deeper into that, but that allows you to, hit the target returns that are needed there. And then it's the classic, volume versus profitability trade-off of, as you make that decision, like the deeper you go into the subscriber base, the more actions you can take, and then you're trading off a little bit of incremental profitability. And really, like, the goal of every business is to like maximize the whole pie. And there's a sweet spot in there, which depends on each business. And, that's a really, good flexibility to have there. The other one is what kind of offers are being really put forward to the customers in this context. And, it could be ones with more investment, less investments, and you could also structure the returns on the different offers as well. So it's a combination of what customer you're targeting and what offer you're giving them, and the offer that you're giving also determines what's going to be the take rate of that customer. Obviously, like, the richer the offer, like, the higher the take rate, and there's this kind of sweet spot of optimization of what's the optimal take rate for the given subscriber base and so on. So, like, you have a lot of flexibility in offer design there as well. And, my favorite one of this is like, how do you stair step into it, like, without just, giving some large amount of money, like, without knowing what that ends up in return. It's that, you're able to test as you go on through it. Is like, okay, let's, start with a pilot. We're going to run like a few thousand, and we're going to monitor the unhappy parts of those populations and the happy parts, and make sure that the prediction models are actually aligning with the experience post effect, like kind of like, a back test that what was done originally aligns with what the expectation was. And then any adjustments need to be made afterwards. And as it proves fruitful, then you're able to scale up and roll it out on a bigger scale, fine tune the offers, fine tune the target customers, and so on. And over time, you're able to really scale it and optimize it to the size of your business. And I think that's a really powerful flexibility there that's offered. That's it's really easy to work with from like a finance and leader standpoint, and being able to also sell it to the internal stakeholders as well. So and again, this varies company to company depending on the different layout, but generally there's good amount of opportunity everywhere. And in closing, I think this is one of the best examples of like, how do we apply data to make better decisions? It's the better that we're able to forecast what customer performance is going to look like, the better that we're able to forecast what customers costs. And we're not talking about this here, but like the way that we're able to kind of get down to the unit level and forecast at the unit level, we can make much more powerful decisions. And Posic AI has enabled us to do that.
Awesome. Vasu, turn the time over to you.
So you can see my slide, right? Getting started. Sawa, first of all, thank you so much. As you were talking, I had 20 minutes of quiet time. I keep hearing everything you and I talked like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, the number of business cases we did. I think it looks simple when you now look back and kind of recap the journey that we had about like where to start, how much capital allocation we should do in proactive compared to the sales. These looked like hard questions at 4 or 5 years ago, but we went through iterations, and there's so much data that you and I looked at, and how we proved the business cases, all of that. So thank you so much. What I wanted to do in the next 2 minutes, as the audience are thinking about maybe a question or two, for them to think about how to get started, maybe they can start typing it. I actually wanted to kind of add some value to the audience about how do we get started. Sawa shared a lot of experience about how to think about investments here, what are the alternatives, where do you want to focus, and the flexibility. I love the last slide. This slide is coming from Gartner during their annual enterprise survey about how to start AI projects. They found that before doing these types of initiatives, everyone thinks, oh yeah, first year is going to be a quick pilot, we'll prove the case, everything Sawa mentioned, and second year is going to be a quick launch. That's what everyone thinks. But in reality, what their survey concluded is it takes up to 4 years to get these types of projects started for full potential, not like baby efforts, doing something on a laptop, producing some model. But what we are talking about is deciding what data sources we want to use, deciding what internal data sources, what external data sources, deciding how to convert them into models, deciding, what offers are we going to create, deciding how much investment are we going to make, deciding which channels to communicate with the customer, email or field reps or contact center or, SMS. There's so many decisions to make. And the most important one, where pilots go on and on and on, is we think the data scientist thinks one thing, and then you show that data about, why this customer is at risk. The frontline rep says, I have no idea what we are talking. This looks like Greek and Latin to me if we dump too much of data science on them. So it has to be like really, really simple, right? So we are well aware of this thing. And what we have created is, how do we squeeze this time that everyone wants to do AI, but it takes too much time? In reality, because we work with only recurring revenue subscription customers, and Sawa and several other Sawa peers, we have proved this thing over and over, and we can comfortably say we're going to squeeze this time into 90 days, building the models, advising on data integrations, picking a problem, recommending what types of offers, either bottom up or top down, right? All these different approaches Sawa mentioned, and it takes first 90 days with our solution to take it live. And then we use the rest of the 3 quarters within the first year, because the finance leaders, and the board wants to see the positive return before they commit to the second year and third year. So we use the next 3 quarters to prove the ROI and go through all the test and everything Sawa mentioned. So that's proven, and that's a codified process for us. And what it does is not only make the finance leaders and the operational leaders and the marketing leaders look fantastic, for the commitments they made, and then commitment of resources and time and whatnot, and also quickly expand this into additional use cases. So once you bring the data together, once you understand what are the risk drivers, who are the happy customers, who are the unhappy customers before they make some adverse decisions, think about using the same technology for price optimization. Like, where do you want to increase the price and how much do you want to increase the price? You don't want to do that on unhappy customers, for example. I'm oversimplifying, right? And you can use the same technology for driving NPS. So you can secure more referrals from the happy customers, right? Or even apply the same technology using your best customers. How do you score your incoming leads and expand the business, right? So these are all the possible use cases in which you can grow the customers, but start with retention, which Sava, kind of shared very well based on his real experience about how much value that is. Sava, I do want to ask one question that is coming up on the Q&A. I know you have a hard stop, but if you can spare like 2 minutes. Were there back and forth decisions in terms of proactive retention versus, these are both investments, sales versus proactive retention? How did you and your peers think about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So generally, when thinking about capital allocation in our space, some of the highest returns that you would get is from retention. And when you're thinking about like, hey, how much of capital goes towards new unit production and versus retention efforts, generally it's very easy to justify that the returns that are from retention there are like a lot bigger. And in the case of proactive extensions, like even more so. And there's a lot of again, a lot kind of goes with the offer structuring there, but there's some offers that have like incredible value to them and pretty good take rates as well too. And you can kind of structure that returns wise based on the needs of the business. The interesting part is like when you're looking at rate reduction offers, those tend to be like a lot higher returns than ones that you have to do equipment, which kind of makes sense intuitively because you're not investing like anything hard at the moment. You're kind of giving up a little bit of future cash flow stream. The riskier that customer is, the quicker that offset happens, and then it's just profit.
Awesome. So with that, maybe we are ready to close unless anyone else has additional questions. Brandon, I will pass it to you.
All right. Well, we would appreciate everyone joining us today. And in kind of summary, the Vozic AI solution allows you to be able to identify which of your customers are high risk and to identify why they're high risk and what you can offer them today to move them on the curve, to take advantage of that arbitrage that exists. As we look at some of the people that are joining us today, some we haven't had a chance to talk to, some we've talked to before, and maybe you're still considering this. We look forward to talking to each of you. We have some really good incentives going on right now in terms of our software. We would be happy to offer 50% off of our software as a service fee to any of our prospects that are on the call today. That would be for the first year of service. Our contracts are 1-year contracts. You sign up with us, and as Vasu illustrated, 90 days later, you're off to the races. The solution is being utilized by your frontline agents. At the end of the first year, if you aren't seeing the value, there's no harm, no foul. You can walk away. We've never had a customer who has opted to do that. And then we just go on a year-to-year basis. The next thing you know, 6 years have passed, and you'll be here on the webinar talking about the success of your company. So we appreciate you here today. We'll reach out to you. You feel free to reach out to us as well. But I think you'll see LinkedIn invites from myself and Vasu, and maybe some emails. And we'd be happy to spend some more time answering your questions. We'd be happy to get you connected with Sava if you want to pepper him with more questions about how they implemented. But taking that capital and allocating it within their organization has had massive returns for them. It is a great turnaround story for them, and it can be one for you. Again, we appreciate the time. We'll talk to you later. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Sava. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for having me.